Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a very fun one, and it's one that has been requested quite a bit actually on my channel, and it's movies for different aesthetics. So I thought it would be really fun to base movies around the most popular aesthetics that I've been seeing online. The first aesthetic I'm going to talk about, it's probably one of the most popular ones right now, and it's cottagecore. So cottagecore is basically a romanticized version of farm life, girls in flowy dresses living in cottages and growing their own vegetables and tending to the farm, and very simple, nature loving, very pretty scenery. So the movies that come to mind when I think of cottagecore are, first, Atonement. Atonement is a period drama starred by the one and only Keira Knightley, the period piece queen. I feel like you can't really think of a period drama without Keira Knightley in it. It also stars Saoirse Ronan when she was a little girl, and it got her first Oscar nomination, which is really amazing. So Atonement is a really good movie, a really heartbreaking movie, and it's got all of these cottagecore elements such as the outfits that Keira Knightley wears, pretty scenery with lots of green. They do not, however, live a simple life. They're actually pretty wealthy, so their house is huge, but still has those cottagecore elements. It's an amazing movie. I've recommended it before in my videos because I love it. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it's actually very heartbreaking as well. The second movie I'm gonna talk about is The Secret World of Arrietty. I feel like a lot of Studio Ghibli movies fit the cottagecore criteria. My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, When Marnie Was There. I feel like all of those can definitely be cottagecore, but I decided to go with The Secret World of Arrietty. In this movie, Arrietty is a really small tiny girl. She lives in this huge normal human-sized house where normal-sized humans live, but she's really tiny, and she has to basically steal stuff so that she can survive. It's set in this beautiful cottage house full of flowers and grass and just greenery. It's really beautiful, and because she is so tiny, when she's walking through the garden you see all of these huge flowers all around her. It's a really fun movie. I wouldn't say is one of Ghibli's best, but it's definitely a really enjoyable and way less deep movie than some of the other ones by Ghibli. I actually did a little kind of cosplay of Arrietty on my Instagram the other day, and yeah, I really recommend it if you still haven't watched it. The next cottagecore movie I want to talk about is Matilda. Matilda is one of my all-time favorite movies from when I was a kid. I think it's probably one of the best children's movies. It was just fun, full of magic, very original. It's about this girl Matilda who has magical powers. She can move things around just by pointing at them. Since she was a little girl, she was obsessed with books. She's super smart for her age, but her family do not support her at all. She meets this teacher, Miss Honey, who understands Matilda and wants her to, reach her full potential. Miss Honey lives in this really cute tiny cottage. I always wanted to live there when I was a kid. It just looked so pretty. When Matilda went to visit and she was pouring some tea. It's just extremely wholesome. I want to give a special mention to two other movies that I wanted to talk about, but since I have a lot of other aesthetics, I don't want to make this super long. But another movie that I think is cottagecore is Wolf Children. It's an anime movie. I talked about it in my anime movies video. It's really beautiful. And the other one is Minari, a movie that I just watched literally today. It just came out. It's by A24. It's a Korean movie, and it's about this Korean family that moved to Arkansas and are working on a farm. Okay, let's move on to the next aesthetic. Okay, so Dark Academia was probably the most requested one when I asked on my Instagram story. I've been seeing so many things about Dark Academia lately. It's very popular right now. This aesthetic basically revolves around the pursuit of learning, classic literature. A lot of the times it's set in a school or college. The fashion is very preppy. Okay, so let's get into my picks for Dark Academia movies. The first one is possibly just the perfect choice for Dark Academia, and it's Dead Poets Society. I've recommended this movie before on my channel. It stars Robin Williams, a comedy genius, but he's not being comedic in this role. He is a teacher at this private school, and he is trying to get the students to be really passionate about what they're learning. He shows them poetry, he tells them to seize the day, to live their life to the fullest, like it's the last day. He has a lot of passion, and I feel like that's one of the main reasons why it's so perfect for Dark Academia. Of course, it's set in this beautiful private school. All of the boys wear, you know, their uniforms, the architecture of the school, everything just screams Dark Academia. The next movie I'm gonna talk about is A Little Princess. I used to watch it a lot when I was a kid, and it always made me really sad for some reason. Now I understand why, because I'm an adult. This movie is a little bit heartbreaking, I'm not gonna lie. It's about this young girl who is sent to this boarding school. The headmistress of this boarding school is just really strict, and this little girl is not having a great time, but she still wants to keep her spirits up. She still thinks that every girl is a princess. Some things happen that are really sad that I'm not gonna spoil, which is why I think when I was a little kid I was like, I like this movie, kind of, I think. I think it's Dark Academia because it's set, of course, in a boarding school. It's not as on the nose Dark Academia, I don't think, because it doesn't really revolve around academics per se. It's more about the journey of this little girl, but I still think the setting is very much Dark Academia, so, and it's a really sweet movie. The next one that I'm gonna talk about is Good Will Hunting. This movie stars Matt Damon and is about this young man who is a janitor at MIT, but he is extremely intelligent, genius level. Late at night when he's supposed to be doing his janitor work, he actually starts solving problems that are left on the whiteboard at the university. A professor discovers this and he tries to help him reach his full potential. This is a really great movie. It also stars Robin Williams. He's just great overall. Okay, let's move on to the next aesthetic. Of course, it shares a lot of similarities with Dark Academia. It revolves around the passion for literature, music, art, and learning. But the difference is that Light Academia has a lighter color palette. So the movies that I chose for Light Academia are: first, Call Me By Your Name. Call Me By Your Name is a beautiful movie starring Timothée Chalamet. It's set in Italy during the summer. It is extremely beautiful. The scenery just makes me want to live there. It's about this boy, Elio, and he's just spending his summer in Italy. He meets this other man and they have this summer romance, but a lot of the movie just involves them doing really mundane things around the house. It does have those elements of art and literature. The movie moves pretty slow because it mimics, you know, just the days passing by doing nothing. My second pick for Light Academia is Little Women. Little Women, directed by Greta Gerwig, starring my girl Saoirse Ronan. I would say this movie is also cottagecore, but I put it in Light Academia because of Jo. Jo wants to be a writer. Throughout the whole movie, she just wants to be a successful writer. I think that passion for literature and for, you know, her writing is what made me put it in this category. It's a beautiful movie. I said in my last video, because I also recommended it in my last video, that it was just pure serotonin. A lot of people said, well, I cried a lot watching this movie. I cried too, but I feel like the overall emotion that this movie transmits, at least to me, is just happiness. So that's why I said it was pure serotonin. Of course, it has sad moments that I'm not gonna spoil if you haven't seen it or read Little Women. Really, really lovely movie. The last movie for Light Academia I'm gonna talk about is Loving Vincent. This movie is the very first oil painting animation that I've ever seen. I don't know if there's more after this one came out or before, I don't know, but this is the first one that I've seen where it's animated through oil paintings. How crazy is that? It's a story about a man who comes to the hometown of Vincent van Gogh to deliver his last letter. I decided to put it in Light Academia because, of course, it's centered around an artist's life, and it's actually art. It's paintings animated. Let's move on to the next aesthetic. Art ho. So the art ho aesthetic is probably my favorite aesthetic just because of the colors. In this aesthetic, very bright colors such as yellow are very present. There's a lot of art, painting, flowers. People that are into the art ho aesthetic are pretty artistic, obviously it's in the name, which brings me to my movie picks for art ho. So the first pick is Moonrise Kingdom, a movie by Wes Anderson. I feel like any movie by Wes Anderson would fit this aesthetic pretty well. Moonrise Kingdom has a beautiful color palette of blues, pinks, yellows. It's about this young girl and this young boy who are not having a good time at home, so they decide to run away together. Obviously, the cinematography and the art direction is amazing. It's Wes Anderson, so you know that when you're gonna watch one of his films, it's gonna look pretty good. The next movie I'm gonna talk about is Before Sunrise. Before Sunrise is a beautiful romantic movie about this man and this woman who meet on this train and they decide to spend one day together, and the whole movie revolves around that one day. This movie is set in Vienna which means it has a beautiful landscape. I feel like someone who's into the art ho aesthetic would be really happy just walking around in Vienna with a person that they just met, just talking about life. And the last one for art ho is American Beauty. It's about this man who is just sick of his life, and he decides to turn his life around and try to live the life that he always wanted to live. He has this teenage girl who just feels misunderstood, but she meets this guy who she immediately clicks with. She also has this friend who is really insecure, but she doesn't portray it to the outside. She seems like this really confident girl, when in reality she really isn't. The score of the movie is just beautiful. This movie is kind of disturbing, but I'd say in a very dark and beautiful way. Okay, so the roots of grunge were actually around the 1980s, 1990s in Seattle. It revolved around the music scene over there. Of course, grunge is a music genre, most famous for bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. As far as fashion, it was a lot of flannels, band tees, Doc Martens. It was just a lot of gritty imagery that depicted people being kind of hopeless and against society. Fun fact, grunge actually used to be my aesthetic of choice when I was around 17, 18. I actually had a Tumblr that was dedicated to grunge and grunge bands. I know it's hard to believe now when you look at my channel, when you look at myself. I still really love the music. The aesthetic though, I'm more of an art ho kind of girl. Okay, so the first grunge movie is Trainspotting. He is a heroin addict who is trying to give up his addiction. This addiction, of course, damages his relationships with his family and friends. This movie is probably the perfect grunge movie. It's just gritty and dirty, very 90s. Revolves around these young men who are deeply into drugs. The look is just perfectly grunge. Okay, I said that Trainspotting was perfectly grunge, but actually this next movie is way more perfectly grunge. It's called Singles. It's a movie set in 1992 in Seattle. It's about the lives and the relationship of all these young people. And actually, Pearl Jam, the band, has a cameo in this movie. This has just all of the elements of grunge, the music, the fashion, the era, Seattle. I guess this one is the perfect grunge movie. And lastly, Clerks. It's a movie by Kevin Smith, and it's about these two young men who are clerks at this grocery store. It's pretty much their life as, grocery store clerks. They are annoying customers. They talk about movies, they talk about hockey. I'd say this movie is pretty grunge because it was set in the 90s. The fashion is pretty grungy. And also, it's just these two losers, let's say, that are living their life. And grunge is all about that hopelessness. Okay, so Barbiecore, as the name states, is an aesthetic revolving around everything Barbie. Lots of pink, lots of sparkles, lots of makeup and girly things, being very confident. The movies that I chose for Barbiecore are, of course, Legally Blonde. I feel like movies for this aesthetic are often disregarded because they are really girly movies. So a lot of the times they're only seen as chick flicks and not actually good movies. But let me tell you, Legally Blonde is one of the best structured movies that exists. We all know Legally Blonde, about this girl, Elle Woods, who is a sorority girl. She's very much into fashion. She's in love with her boyfriend, who ends up moving to Harvard. So she, of course, follows him over there and tries to become a lawyer to impress him. The importance of this movie is just astronomical. Elle actually realizes that she's much more than, a girlfriend. The next one, of course, you guessed it, is Mean Girls. Mean Girls is probably one of the most quotable movies out there. It's a really fun movie. The fashion is just so 2000s. Ooh, he's getting dark here. And the last movie is Life Size, which is a movie from my childhood. I haven't seen it in a while. Oh, it also stars Lindsay Lohan and Tyra Banks. She has this Barbie doll that comes to life, and it's Tyra Banks, the supermodel. This one, I won't say it's like a masterpiece of a movie because I really doubt it is. A special mention for other Barbiecore movies are, the Barbie movies. By the way, let me know which one is your favorite Barbie movie. For me, it will always be The Nutcracker, but I also love Swan Lake. I also love Rapunzel. But yeah, let me know which one is your favorite Barbie movie. Okay, let's move on to the last aesthetic. It's plain and simple. It's an aesthetic that revolves around pastel colors. A lot of the times I'm part of this aesthetic because I just love pastel colors. It just brings you this feeling of calmness and sweetness. I chose some movies that have a really amazing pastel color palette, such as Edward Scissorhands. You wouldn't think that this movie is actually really colorful when you see the character of Edward Scissorhands, but the aesthetic of the movie itself is actually really colorful. The houses are all different colors, the decor, everything is very pastel, and I love it so much. Next is Brooklyn. It's a period piece starring Saoirse Ronan. I just love Saoirse Ronan movies. She can do no wrong. But Brooklyn has actually a really sweet color palette as well. It's pretty vintage. Her outfits, the aesthetic of New York during that era was just very pastel and very pretty. Another movie that's also a period drama is Marie Antoinette, but the color palette in it is, full of pastel, sweet desserts and pink and blue shoes and dresses, and it's really interesting because usually during that era we don't really see movies that have this color palette, but Sofia Coppola decided to add this sweetness to this movie, which I love. I want to give also some special mentions to The Florida Project, another movie that surprised me when it comes to the color palette. It's so sweet. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, it's such a colorful movie. And lastly, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which is a Studio Ghibli movie. It's probably one of the most muted ones that they have. It's really sweet. The animation is beautiful and is really different from all of their other animations. And that's it. We've come to the end of each aesthetic. Let me know which one is your favorite aesthetic. If you want to add more movies to each aesthetic, you are very welcome. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.